July, Tver called upon Romania to aid in their conquest of Rostov, owned by Armeniakan. As such, Romania joined the war. On the 1st of April, 1561, an ethnic minority enclave of remnant Turks living in central Anatolia rose up and seceded from Armeniakan. Their realm was known as the Sheikdom of the Ottomans, and marked the third of the great Turk kingdoms in history. In 1563, this new realm was made able to enlist the help of other Muslim powers like the Nogai, Transoxiana, Avaria, and Mazandaran in its goal to conquer Anatolia, uniting it under their Sheikh Mustafa I. This interfered with the invasion and the war in general. In 1566, Kral Alexandru Ilyas decided to support separatist rebels in the Ottoman realm himself. Knowing his history, he remembered how the Ghaznavids and the Seljuks swept across the Middle East in a matter of years, and how the bloody Turks ruled over them for many cruel centuries, only stopped by the Golden Horde and Armeniakan, both of whom were now in seeming collapse, yet somehow remaining in their places as some of the greatest powers in the world. Kral Alexandru Ilyas thought he would do his best to stop those things from happening again, especially when those who beat them last would not be able to do so again if this were to get out of hand. On the 22nd of October, Tver won its war, and gave Romania the grand city of Constantinople as a show of gratitude. A grand gift it was, a symbol of old Orthodox glory. The Patriarch himself would go there and convert the city back from Massalian, which it had been for many centuries, and reside in it as soon as his work was over. In December, Armeniakite separatist rebels went to war against the Ottomans, and Kral Alexandru Ilyas went to war to support them. On the 27th of May, 1567, 27,000 men under General Mihena Morutsi brushed aside the 6,800 Ottoman Turkish forces and stormed the capital of Tokat. Given a free hand by the Kral, he locked the city gates with the Turks inside and burned the city of Tokat down, allowing his men to plunder the surrounding country while the flames danced through the night. Alexandru Ilyas, when the news reached him of what he had done, thought it cruel, and asked him why his conquest was so unusual. He replied that it was revenge for Christendom, and in some ways, revenge for a crime that had not yet happened. The Romanian-Ottoman intervention war was won on the 15th of March, 1568, leaving them with a single province, Bozak. Meanwhile, in 1569, the Golden Horde fell from the rank of great power entirely. The new great powers were as follows. The Indian Shia Muslims, Bahmanis at the bottom. Transoxiana, the disorganized Sunni Muslim horde right above that. Rajputana, Sunni Indians above them. Romania, taking a strong position at the middle of the pack, but with all of its strong alliances, these Orthodox Romanians were truly formidable. Above them, the Papal State, Catholic Italians, doing everything they could to struggle against the Reformation. Then, England, the first and so far only colonial power in the New World. Second from the top is to be found Germany, dominant in all Northern Europe to all competitors. It had not had to engage in true warfare for decades. These German Catholics and Protestants were coasting on its reputation to ensure peace and stability. Finally, Armeniakan still held its place as the most powerful country in the world. These Greek Massalians, despite a state of constant war against their neighbors, which would prove almost apocalyptic to any other nation, was able to maintain a strong, disciplined, and merciless army, as well as a loyal, hard-working people to underpin their hard-won place at the top. Beginning in 1569, Queen Ryland, who grew up in Germany before her royal marriage to Alexandru Ilyas, began to speak of her military ideas to her husband. She sought to improve the conditions of soldiers, and overall wanted to pursue policies governed foremost by reason. Kral Alexandru Ilyas made certain that his wife's reforms were not only carried out, but that everyone knew where they came from. This led to the soldiers paying her great reverence, and the generals holding her ideas in high regard. On the 8th of June, 1561, Kral Alexandru Ilyas Basarab I pontificated in a royal decree that the state and the monarchy are not separate entities, but rather one and the same. Romania does not get its power from him. Romania is a manifestation of his power itself. This could be summed up as such to one idea. He is the state. By July, two major changes in Europe were happening at the same time. The Golden Horde was under attack by almost every neighbor it's had, and states such as Polotsk, Novgorod, Perm, Tver, Kiev, Ryazan, and Lithuania were taking as much land as they could before the Muslim hordes of the south reached past that final strip of Golden Horde land, holding them back. In the north, a collection of Catholic Norsemen had very nearly conquered the entirety of Scandinavia under their kingdom of Norlanti, ruled by Grand Niaz Enzio Paru II. Finally, to the west, England had occupied the entirety of Ireland in an ongoing war, and annexation seemed likely. In the interest of further shoring up their position in Europe, Kral Alexandru Ilias decided to improve relations with Burgoyne, with the intention of allying them, in order to protect against a burgeoning, and most likely vengeful, England, which had also recently aligned itself with the new kingdom of Norlanti. To the south, the Papal State had also annexed most of the Iberian Peninsula, leaving only Catholic Andalusia standing in its way. Meanwhile, King Aldolf Amalfitani of Burgoyne was not interested in such an arrangement, and spurned Romania's efforts. Beginning in 1573, seeing the northward advance of the Nogai, Romania proclaimed independence guarantees and allied itself to all the breakaway Orthodox kingdoms finding themselves free from the Golden Horde. All accepted, save Novgorod, for they were angry at Romania's allying their local rivals. By the 20th of July, 1575, Gunther von Ortenburg's son, Gunther II, raced to Bucharest in order to warn the Kral of his current state of affairs. Romania was careening towards financial disaster, and had run down its surplus almost to the ducat. With only 5,000 ducats left in the treasury, and 200 more being spent each month on maintenance alone, the country would run itself into the ground unless it drastically cut its spending. Alexandru Ilias, however, disregarded this claim, believing that his construction projects would eventually pay for themselves. He sent him out, but thanked him for his concern nonetheless. Luckily, in 1576, Romanian miners hit a massive deposit of gold, yielding almost 700 ducats to the government and triggering a gold rush. In 1580, Alexandru Ilias saw that the Ottomans had conquered territory from Armeniakan once again, and sent them a scornful insult along the lines of, "No map can be a work of art so long as your nation exists on it." He also issued an embargo against Ottoman traders. In short, he did all he could to provoke a war. Meanwhile, the treasury truly was on the brink of collapse, and all the advisors of the Kral surrounded him, imploring him to see the direness of the situation. Eventually he did, and he called all the members of every estate together at the palace in Bucharest, calling the Second National Council. There, they locked themselves in, and debated for a week on what to do to save money. Upon emerging from the palace and onto the balcony, there was no celebration or hoisting of flags. There, Kral Alexandru Ilias announced a wide array of money-saving measures, such as decreasing the maintenance of their sizable military, navy, and a general tax increase. He took a fistful of gold coins from his pocket and cast them into the crowd, saying, "I am ordained by God and his holy Orthodox synod. I am no petty merchant, proficient in usury. The council has done what it must to preserve the country, but by the frothing rage in my heart, let this be the last time I hear of money." It was much worse than his advisors had even told him. Every fort in the nation was emptied of its garrisons and mothballed. The pay of every soldier and sailor was only a quarter of what it had been, and trade across the kingdom was slowing to a snail's pace because the merchants had no confidence in Romanian markets anymore. And even still, after all this, Romania was losing money. Meanwhile, as Romania teetered on the very brink, Burgoyne had reached the New World in South America and had kicked off the Columbian Exchange in its most earnest stages. Such an arrangement would prove profitable in the extreme to the colonial powers, as Romania would soon find out. On the 14th of December, 1580, in what was a quite inopportune time, Germany called Romania into the Anglo German Excommunication War to defend Germany against England, the Anglo West Indies, Brittany, and Wallachia. Romania joined, but the Král ordered a total defensive war, in the hopes of avoiding the greatest amount of costs inevitably occurred by war. Finally, with 1,000 ducats left in the treasury, Alexandru Ilias was forced to fire 25,000 men during wartime. An unheard-of thing that truly highlights the exacerbated desperation of the economic state at the time. Soon, the war became more than just a war of excommunication against Germany. It became a decimation of one set of alliances against another. Polotsk, Norway, Hesse, Denmark, Burgundy, Utrecht, Brittany, Angloland, and Wallachia now constituted the total membership of their side, and Romania barely had an army, nearly in bankruptcy itself. With the 22nd of October 1583, 20,000 Wallachian soldiers killed 27,000 underfed and underpaid soldiers at the Battle of Bihor, and it was the death of these soldiers that finally put the treasury in the positives again, by 1 ducat a year. Dozens of foreign armies poured across the Romanian countryside, and all that it could do was watch them come and occupy empty forts. These forts, now useless and actually detrimental to Romania, were the aforementioned building projects of the Král. These building projects, indeed, ended up costing him a great deal of money, and many believe it was their construction that thrust Romania into the state of affairs it had now found itself in. On the 18th of July, 1585, Bucharest fell to a 30,000-strong Wallachian army. The next day, 31,000 Wallachian separatists rose up to join their war, south of the capital. On the 11th of February, 1586, the War of German Excommunication ended in a shameful defeat, with Germany ceding Linz, Ostmark, Picardy, Chartres, Caux, and Paris to England, while Romania ceded Békés to Wallachia, a western border province. Now all that was left to do was lose all of its other wars. In 1587, Poland declared war on Germany and Romania with the goal of annexing the necessary provinces to form a complete Poland, uniting the Polish people under a single, unified state. In December, another humiliating defeat was conferred upon Germany and Romania. Germany was to cede Goldingen to Livonia, Brest, and Turów to Polotsk. Meanwhile, Romania ceded Przemyśl and Lvov to Polotsk. In November of 1588, the 30,000 Wallachian separatists occupied Bucharest. In 1589, Romania lost to Denmark and was forced to pay them every last ducat in the treasury, as well as 10% of whatever meager income they had for the next decade as war reparations. In 1592, Romania ceded all Polish provinces to Poland and all Kievan provinces to Kiev. On the 8th of September, provinces occupied by and under the influence of the rebels began to secede and defect to Wallachia. The first province of this sort was Burgos, which defected to Wallachia on that date. Meanwhile, sensing an opportunity, the rather useless ally of the Papal State declared war on Wallachia. Finally, miraculously, on the 15th of September, Romania managed to negotiate a white peace with Burgoyne. If nothing else, the War of German Excommunication and the aftershock conflicts that followed in its wake were a testament to the great deal of almost unfathomable power that came from the owning of colonies, having wells of vast, untapped resources across the sea that could be used to browbeat any enemy into oblivion. Finally, with the Wallachian separatists occupying over half the country, Král Alexandru Ilias spent the nation's scant savings in order to hire a number of mercenaries to dispatch the 22,000 rebels that were left. In December, Silistria defected to Wallachia. In 1594, Tarnovo defected to Wallachia. Meanwhile, maps reached Europe at this time of Asia, and it was revealed that the Ha Empire had collapsed some time before, now a much smaller warlord state claiming the imperial title, calling itself Wu. Wu was surrounded by a multitude of other warlord states, all vying to be the next imperial successor state. In December, the separatist rebels were defeated, and Romania returned to relative peace, though devastated almost in its entirety. On New Year's Day, 1595, Romania lost its status as a great power. On the 30th of September, in the wake of such unmitigated disaster, which grew entirely from the troubles of money, Král Alexandru Ilias began to pursue economic ideas, beginning with the formation of a more formal economic bureaucracy. On the 12th of July, 1597, Radu Ilias Basarab I ascended to the throne, his superior administrative skill sure to be helpful in the hard times to come.